Hi everyone, I'm Maimah Karmo, and you're watching Breathe TV, a safe space to exhale and to breathe throughout your breast cancer journey. Today I'm really happy to have three women with me who are amazing advocates. We'll be talking about living with triple negative breast cancer and how it impacts our lives and what we don't talk about, don't know about, and should know about as it pertains to TNBC. In a space of honoring the fact that we're on Breathe TV, I always want to start this show off with setting an intention and energy for the moment. As you go through breast cancer, we oftentimes forget to breathe. And so I want to start the show off, as I always do, with a meditation or with giving us a moment to just simply breathe. So having said that, if you're watching, please place your hands on your chest or on your belly and just take some time to breathe with me in silence and to honor the fact that we're here, we're alive, and we're present to this very moment. Okay, close your eyes. Thank you. I wanted to ask, how did it make you all feel to just pause? I know that when you're with your lives, you're busy, your mothers, your advocates. How often do we take time to breathe in our lives? Just to really enjoy just not doing, but just breathing.
I don't think we do it enough, Maimah. I think I need to practice that more, be more intentional about that.
What about you, Rhelia?
I'm learning to be more intentional about it because there are several moments where I don't take that time to breathe. And then it catches up with me through the pain or something like that. But I'm more intentional now.
Melissa?
Turn the phones off, turn everything off, and always remember to just have a moment to myself.
It's so important. I know that after my diagnosis, I literally stopped breathing properly. I was breathing in my chest for so long. I was so stressed and didn't even know I was stressed. You know, being told you're triple negative and just all that comes with that. And I was diagnosed 16 years ago. I was so anxious all the time, and meditation and breath work has helped me so much to be in the moment. It's just so amazing. And just to be able to calm my body down, but to also to be able to be in the moment and not think about the past or the future, just like being alive and being thankful for today. I'm thankful for all of you three. You're all triple negative breast cancer warriors, and that's so amazing that you're alive and you're here and you're making your life a living legacy by sharing that with others, and it's just so beautiful that you're doing that. So I'm going to start with Daria and ask you to share your story, just, a few sentences about, your breast cancer diagnosis, learning you were triple negative, and what that meant for you.
I was diagnosed in November of 2018, and I found my lump just a month earlier through self-exam. So I really advocate for that and for women being familiar with their bodies. But I didn't know anything about triple negative breast cancer. I'd seen a few commercials about HER2 positive, HER2 negative, but I honestly didn't know what any of that meant, Maimah. I had no clue. And so in my initial diagnosis, they told me that I was stage 2. but I don't recall hearing anything about triple negative breast cancer. It was when I had my second and final diagnosis, my second opinion, who ultimately ended up being my medical team. They really explained to me and my family what that meant. And so it was in that moment that I understood the gravity of all of this. I was terrified. My family, I remember being in the exam room with all of us, and we all cried. None of us were familiar with it, and we didn't have any family history either. So it was a lot. And it was found through mammogram and biopsy. I had to really dig deep because, okay, that meant there's different types of breast cancer. You know, I didn't know any of that. I was really uninformed about it. So it was a frightening initial experience.
What did you know about TNBC before you were diagnosed with it?
I didn't know anything about it. And I was actually PR positive, but it was weekly positive. So later on, it was categorized as triple negative. I was diagnosed in July 2020 with invasive ductal carcinoma, and it was stage 2, grade 3. And I just began to learn a new language at that time, because I did find it through a lump. I didn't know too much about it other than you needed to check your breasts, that you do breast exams.
And that was in 2020, you said?
That I was diagnosed with it.
So I think they had just gotten the first treatment onto the market the year before, right? For triple negative.
Oh, wow.
When I was diagnosed, there was nothing for triple negative breast cancer patients.
I had AC and Taxol.
I did the AC and the Taxol, and interestingly enough, and I'm sure we will get into this, I had to reverse the timing and start with the Taxol because I caught a really bad infection prior to beginning chemotherapy. So I started out with was supposed to be 12 Taxol infusions, and I ended up being able to do 11.
And I was just flipped the opposite. I had to stop my Taxol treatment because after the first one, I had so much pain from my hip all the way down to my legs till they reduced it a little bit, but then I only had like 1.5 treatment and I had to stop my Taxol.
That's so interesting. Taxol was horrible for me too. It was horrible. I had really bad, horrible itching. And I got welts from the itching. It was like I had like hives all over. I would itch everywhere, my scalp to under my feet, and terrible nausea. What was your experience, Melissa, with the treatment?
It was rough. I did the same thing. I had AC and I had Taxol, and I did the AC first, which I wasn't really prepared for, because when I went in and I seen the oncologist, it was like, okay, well, these are the drugs that we have for triple negative, and this is what we know that works. I was told that, oh, well, you're going to feel like you have the flu for a few days. Terrible. I needed blood several times. I always needed IV fluids because I stayed dehydrated. I wasn't able to eat. I needed iron infusions. I went through it. And by the time I got to my Taxol, I was like, literally didn't want to finish treatment. The nurses like begged me. They was like, you came really close. Just finish it. Just go ahead with the Taxol. So the Taxol for me wasn't that bad. I had a lot of neuropathy with the Taxol, and I had the rashes and the hives like you explained as well.
Isn't that interesting? I was on a call with other angel advocates and some women who are not angel advocates, all Black women. And I shared that for the first time. It was like, I think it was in 2020. I shared the side effects, and I had all these women say, me too. And I almost stopped treatment myself. My mom's a nurse. She goes, you cannot stop treatment. I won't let you stop. She made me stay on the regimen. How did you feel when you heard the words you had breast cancer, Rhelia, and that it was triple negative?
I was shocked at first, but I really don't remember my response at the moment. I was praying and I was seeking God for some things, and all I heard in that moment was, you shall live and not die. I was like, okay, I know that the biopsy is going to be negative, so why would I hear you shall live and not die? When I went in after the diagnosis and everything, I'm like, well, God says I'm going to live and not die. So that's what I hung on to. So I don't remember what my initial reaction, other than being shocked. Oh my God, I got breast cancer?
You know, my mom said the exact phrase to me when I called her. She said, The Lord told me that you shall live and you will not die. She was so calm, I got mad at her. She was like, no, I heard the words as clear as day after you called me, that you shall live and you shall not die. Melissa, when you were diagnosed and you were told it was triple negative, did you get another opinion? What did you do when you learned you had TNBC?
When I got the call, I actually was sitting in my car in front of my mom's house. I never forget that day. I was sitting in the call because they asked when they done the biopsy, is it okay if we call you? And I said, yeah, because I was really confident that I had been taking care of myself. I had been eating right. You know, I don't drink, I don't smoke. This may be just a cyst. I don't have anything to worry about. I was in a car and they called and told me, and I kind of wept a little bit. When I got the phone call, it was like your very early stage. I had no information on breast cancer. I just thought that it was just one type of breast cancer. You get breast cancer, you go in, you get treatment, you get surgery, and you'll be okay. When I went in, I sat before the oncologist and the surgeon. I was then made aware that I had triple negative breast cancer. With what information that I was given from the doctor, I went home and I searched it. I got on YouTube and I started watching these videos and looking at different interviews and any kind of information I could get. And everything that I came up with was like a death sentence. It was like you didn't see or you didn't read about anyone making it past their 5 years with triple negative breast cancer. It was really, really hard to kind of digest. And I think I just went through the process of it and like, I just want to hurry up and get this over. I went through the whole process, but I think I didn't really, really, really digest what had happened to me until after I finished treatment, after I finished that first surgery.
Did any of you get offered therapy or psychosocial support or anything to deal with the fear? Or was it just like, here's your treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and go live your life?
I didn't get support. They didn't speak specifically about the emotional aspects of having triple negative breast cancer. But during that second diagnosis, when I met with my team, they treated the whole person, fortunately. So they provided social workers and staff that could explain how to navigate and who could provide options to search for therapists, because I'm a person who believes in therapy, and that was even before my diagnosis. And so I knew going in that this was something that I would have to maintain, my mental health. My life completely changed. I was single, living a New York City lifestyle. And here it is, I packed up my entire life and relocated back to my home state in the Midwest to tackle this because it just was more sustainable. So everything about my life changed, Maimah. So I knew that I would need some mental health support. And I was really intentional about that. And I am fortunate that my medical team take the perspective of treating the whole body, the whole person. And for that, I'm grateful. But I do know that that's not necessarily the norm, which is one of the reasons that led me to advocacy for others.
While the doctor's there to treat your body and the cancer, there has to be survivorship, complementary things they can do to support your mental, spiritual, like your emotional needs. And I don't know if we're always offered that. Were you offered support about dealing with the TNBC diagnosis?
It was chemo, surgery, and you're healed. Bye. No.
What about you, Rhelia?
I had navigators that still are my navigators. A doctor treating me as a whole person and the support of my family, but especially because at the time, that was when COVID was just fresh and everybody's figuring everything out. I had to go it alone. So my first consultation was with all of the doctors and their aides or the nurses in one room, and everybody's looking at me. And that was terrifying, but I just decided to allow God to do a perfect work in me and allow him to just allow me to hear clearly and soak up what I needed to in that moment. because everything was just new. I was shocked that I was able to relay it to my family after leaving the appointment. But I found support through the doctors and the nurses when I was having up and down days crying through chemo. They were right there, even if they were just rubbing my hand. And if I had a question, they kind of like fussed at me because I did not tell about a symptom. Because I'm thinking, I got an appointment coming up. They say, no, if you have an issue, you call right away. There's on-call doctors. You need to do that. And my navigators are still helping me out. Even after getting I'm all clear with cancer, they are still supporting me throughout my journey.
So I think that's wonderful. So you have 4 women of color in this room right now, 4 different experiences, none the same, but 2 had support and 2 didn't. If my mom hadn't pushed me to continue treatment, I may not have stayed in treatment. And I had a friend of mine who would leave her job every time I had treatment, come to my house and drive me. Because once I got through with the AC and began Taxol, I was like, I'm done. One thing that we know about clinical trials is that because we are not asked to be in trials as Black women, we are not part of the clinical trials. Therefore, there are not enough treatments targeting our kinds of breast cancer, specifically triple negative breast cancer. I know that I was never offered a trial, and I didn't think trials were for me when I even knew about them, because only my friends who were metastatic were getting into trials. So the perception was that you didn't need a trial till you were metastatic and or close to death, which doesn't make sense to me now, but I didn't know any better at the time, for a long, long time. Were any of you offered clinical trials when you were diagnosed, or at any point throughout your journey?
I was never approached to participate in any clinical trials. And to be quite frank, at the time, I don't know that I would have been receptive to it, simply because I wasn't educated enough. In hindsight, if I had been approached, now that I have an elevated awareness, I believe I would have. So I just think that this speaks to, first of all, the need to be intentional about offering clinical trials to women of color, but it also speaks to the need for proper education about clinical trials in our communities. We all know about the level of distrust that permeates in our culture, and we know why, because it's real. Disparities are real. Racism in medicine is real. So there is a level of distrust. I don't think I would have been open to it. Now that I have, more information, partly thanks to being involved with Tigerlily, I can say that I would probably consider it. I was approached, though, to participate in a few studies about the impact of cancer on Black patients and their caregivers, which I thought was really interesting. I received treatment and surgery at a well-respected teaching hospital, and so they have that sort of infrastructure built in. And I did participate in that because it talked about the emotional, financial, and lifestyle perspectives in this study. But clinical trials, it was never a discussion.
What about you, Melissa?
It was never asked. I was never approached either.
Rayla?
Later on, I did, but during my consultation, they talk about the BRCA testing. That's what really drove me to advocacy, because I'm like, more people would need to hear about this, because I didn't see that many people that looked like me going through treatment and was plus size. So I'm like, there will be somebody coming behind me that will need some type of testing to prove or to evaluate whatever they have going on. So I was open to it.
It's interesting how even between the 4 of us, only one person was offered a trial. And this is what many Black women is what they say, and many times we're never offered a trial. And if we're not asked to be in trials, then they can't design treatments that work for our bodies. The treatments that they design don't work for us. They don't keep us alive, and they don't keep us adhering, because they could have horrible side effects. And I really feel like, in school they teach us about, history and math and other things. We should be talking about the importance of breast health, cervical health, clinical trials, spirituality, breath, just how to live in the world. I mean, I know that we have to go to school for other things, but if you don't know how to take care of your health, nothing else matters, right? So one of the things that Daria, you talk about a lot is your mantra about faith over fear. Talk about the mantra and why you came up with it.
Well, my faith allowed me to tackle each step in this process and not be afraid. And I think especially so during my initial surgeries and throughout chemo and radiation. I really kept telling myself faith over fear. And I also know that that is what helped me to speak up and advocate for myself. I wasn't afraid to ask questions and make decisions because I didn't want anybody else making those decisions for me. And I believe that if you are intentional, your medical team, your doctors see that. They see that you're informed, and I think it impacts your level of care. But Maimah, I have to tell you, previous fear fueled my approach after diagnosis, simply because prior to being diagnosed, I allowed fear to manage my health. I was a woman of a certain age with no children, and I really didn't like talking about my age, and I associated mammograms with aging. So I didn't get mammograms. I didn't do it. I was given the referrals from my PCP, but I ignored it simply because I feared getting older and I had that feeling about a mammogram. So thank God for self-exams. I did know to do that, and I was a very healthy person, and I was familiar with my body. But I know that faith over fear affirmation came simply because after I was diagnosed, I thought about how fearful I had been previously, and I knew that I had to lean into more strength to survive this.
That is so beautiful and so honest. It never occurred to me that people would be afraid of mammograms because of the fact that they are getting older. What kind of mantras did you both use, Rhelia and Melissa? Were there words that got you through the fear of having triple negative breast cancer and the things that you didn't know about that you may be experiencing in the future?
Just like I mentioned earlier, that word that I heard from the Holy Spirit to say that I shall live and not die, that guided me through even the tough times. All I had in that moment was my worship. And all I could do, some days I'm just sitting there just crying out to God during the whole thing, even though I don't know what decision to make, what to make of what the doctors are saying to me. All I had was my worship. That's what got me through. And prior to diagnosis, I was more passive, and I was always on my health, but I really got on my health afterwards, and I was able to speak up and ask a lot of questions. And then that lit a fire in me to want to I started understanding advocacy at that time. And then I was like, whoa, okay, this feels good. I also say that the diagnosis has been the perfect interruption in my life. And the reason why I say that is the person I was before diagnosis was more a little passive, less aggressive, but now I speak up and out for myself. It has brought the personality to me that I grow into love.
I love that you said that. It's so beautiful how advocacy can change us. Melissa, you're part of our first, I believe, the first graduating class of angels.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. It just tell me how your experience was and how it changed your journey.
It opened my eyes up to a lot of things. It made me see healthcare in a whole different light. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in July of 2017. And I went through the whole treatment process. I asked questions. I was very attentive. I would take a book with me to write down notes when I went to my appointments. I just try to follow anything that suggestions my doctors or my team had for me. I try to follow that to a T, because it was like, I'm going through this and I don't want to have to go through this again. So I want to make sure I'm following what I need to do to care for myself so I can get myself out of this situation and rise above it. My team, my first initial team, I had surgery. I had the chemo, and then I had surgery. I was faced with a horrible medical mistake. My biopsy clamp and my original tumor was left in me after surgery. I went almost a whole year before I found out.
Unbelievable.
My goodness.
My goal is to continue to speak, change my pain into power so that it helps those after me. I went through everything a second time. Until you have a doctor look you in your face and say, I don't have answers for you, because in school, what happened to you, we're not taught that. And so until you have, you go in and you ask about a clinical trial, because of the mistakes, I wasn't eligible for a clinical trial. So my pain has now become my passion. Young women do get breast cancer. African-American young women under the age of 40, we are getting breast cancer at an alarming rate. Please stop telling us that we're too young. Please stop telling us that we don't know what we're talking about, or it's just a lump. It's just, this is an issue that is setting me on fire. So when I say that my story is different from anyone else, yes, it is.
It hurts my heart for what you had to go through. It hurts my heart for what you live through every day. You use the words pain and purpose in the same sentence. You know, and that's the only way we get through this, right? It's by turning our pain into purpose, by choosing faith over fear, and by saying to ourselves a mantra that I will live and I will not die. I want to see, like, just ask you three, what would you want to share with somebody who's watching this, who has learned they have triple negative breast cancer, who's in that chair and just heard the words from their doctor? What would you share with them, Rhelia?
I will tell them to breathe and understand your journey is unique to you. You're going to hear a lot. You're going to see a lot. Breathe through it. Take your journey as it comes.
Daria?
Again, breathe. One of my biggest takeaways is that you have to give yourself a lot of grace, and you have to be patient with yourself and be patient with the process, from diagnosis to surgery to doctor appointments to possible setbacks to healing. It all takes time. Let go of your standards of beauty. Be comfortable with releasing some of your agency. What started out, I thought would be a year, turned into 2 years with an additional 6 to 8 months because of the pandemic. So be patient and give yourself time and allow yourself some grace. Practice self-love. Love yourself and pray, and faith over fear.
Thank you. Melissa?
Trust the process and trust who's in charge of the process. I've given my God over my life. I've made him Lord over my health.
This has been one of the most touching, honest interviews we've had. I'm so proud of you all. You have no idea. And I'm just so amazed by your strength and courage and by your faith in the universe, in God. So I thank you for being here. I honor you. I love you all so much. and look forward to having you on again and sharing your stories and just never ever change. I really, really honor you all. I hope that those who are watching are as blessed by this exchange as I have been and moved by it. Until next time, live, love, and breathe. Thank you all. Love you so much. And bye for now.